Do I wanna know is the question I'ma ask. I'm diving in deep, it's like a blast from the past. New guests every week, is that enough for your ass? Cause these men's have us chill, you best grab a coat. You can't handle the questions, you best leave the show. It's Mitchell Cairns and Marc Vicioso, the two kingpins, like Chewy and Solo.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Do I Wanna Know podcast. My name is Mitchell Cairns, and on this show, we have a new guest every single week. But before we get into that, let me introduce the Jordan to my Pippin, the Han Solo to my Chewy, all the way from Mississauga, Ontario, my co-host, Marc Vicioso. Marc, what's up, man?
What's up, my G? I'm right here. I'm excited to go for the second episode.
Hey, man.
It's like 2 months in between. I'm just getting excited for this, you know.
Yes, if you guys didn't know, we did record before the coronavirus hit, and we thought we might get into the studio again once it's over, but clearly the coronavirus has taken over the world. So we decided to go virtual, as you can see here from our homes.
So do you want to get into explaining what the show is for the new guests, or you want me to take that?
Marc, you got that, man. I just talked.
All right, say less. So, Do I Want to Know podcast? For many people, as you know, for the first couple episodes, we want to get you guys in tune with what's going on. We had a show, maybe you watch it. It was called the Sport Board Podcast. Yep. We had our guys that are there. They're still part of the Sport Board. They didn't disappear. They didn't go away. They're not sent exiled to an island. They're still here. But this is just a new show that we wanted to get. And it focuses, so me and Mitch, we're the two co-hosts. We're the two people that you're going to see every day.
Yeah.
Every time you watch a show, you can know that you're going to see that pretty face and you're going to see me on this show. But it's going to be...
Pretty face, man. Come on, Marc.
What did you want to say, Mitch?
No, I said you're the pretty face.
Oh, okay. Say that. I was Jordan, so you know.
Yeah, I gave you Jordan, bro. I did do that.
Exactly. But we wanted to take a sort of break from just a typical sports podcast, because sometimes if you're watching a podcast and you get your attention spans, you need something to always look at. And sometimes if you just go sports for 40, 50 minutes, sure, it's good for the people that know it, but some of you guys, you don't want to watch that. So we made a new show, and it focuses on sports, pop culture, relationships, and anything that they want to say. We wanted to get a new guest on each show to sort of express themselves in a way. Sorry for that noise, but express themselves in a nice way and get to talk to us like it's a real conversation. Yeah. You know, I watched a lot of people have been giving feedback to me watching the show, and they love the conversational vibes. You know, they don't like it when it feels scripted, when it feels like not real. You know, and that's what we really want to go for in this podcast, right, Mitch?
Yeah, this is not scripted at all, guys.
Yeah, of course.
This is not scripted at all, and we want to make sure you guys know that we're trying to have a direct conversation. The only thing you can say is scripted is our topics that we're going to talk about. We don't know exactly. We just chose 3 topics that we think is best for our guests to talk about, and we just go off that.
All right, and do you want to introduce our guest?
We should definitely introduce our guest.
And now, to introduce our second ever guest on the Do I Want to Know podcast, we got Alyssa Morrison. Alyssa,
hi, y'all. Nothing much. What are y'all doing?
Oh, we're having a great time here. I had some snacks before this. I don't know what Mitch is doing. Did he have a parfait? Who knows?
Oh, no. I did not have a parfait, Marc.
All right.
Bringing that out there. Perfect.
Exactly.
Did you have a muffin?
Hey, see, now for anybody who doesn't know, we got producer Frankie Ieantorno. If you watch the last episode, Frankie is going to be our eyes and ears. You may hear just a silent ghost voice of him, but he's going to be helping us out, helping put us together. So thanks, Frankie. But Alyssa, we want to get to how have you been? How's everything been? I know you. For anybody that doesn't know how we know Alyssa, we just didn't bring a random girl from the streets. We just introduced her to the podcast. Said, "So you want to join?" No. So we all go to university together. We all attend sport media at Ryerson University, class of 2023. I took a gap year. Mitch, I know we took a year at another university. But did you go straight from out of high school to university, right?
Yeah, I went straight from high school.
Okay, so how was that experience from just like the whole process of getting it together and getting all the applications ready to come to Toronto?
Yeah, so it was actually a lot more difficult for me than normal Canadians because I am out of the country. I'm from Maryland, which is a little bit south of Toronto, so like 8-hour drive.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit far.
So.
For me, it was kind of difficult because I'm the first person in my family, like kids-wise, to go to school. My brother is actually taking a gap year and playing junior hockey up in Boston, Massachusetts. So he had his own thing going on, but I was the first one that my parents sent to college, and that was pretty big. I think I had a lot of anxiety going into it because I didn't know anyone, didn't know who I was going to live with, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But as for applying and applications, that was probably like the most stressful, which you guys all know how stressful getting into sport media was at Ryerson.
Exactly. Like sport media was like, I had to go to a meeting here, then do a loop-de-loop, write a paragraph, then hope and pray that they allow you.
It's just grades.
Yeah. Is it just grades though?
Yeah. That kind of bothers me because it takes away from like all the hard work we did to get in, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. It kind of separates the people. Like, you're not just book smart or grade smart. Like, you actually had to go through an interview process. You had to write papers and all that. So
exactly. So we went through interview process in sport media, but now we're turning the tables and we're interviewing you again. But this time,
I know, a little bit more imitating this time.
A little bit more intimidating. I don't know. Don't want to scare off the guest. But so you watched the first episode, correct?
I did. Yes,
so,
I did.
Alyssa sort of knows the vibe and the drive, what we're going for here. So me and Mitch, we as producers, directors, co-hosts, whatever you want to call us, Frankie's there too. We got together in a pre-production meeting and we came together with 3 questions that we thought would be best suited and good answers that your audience and anybody that's watching this would like to know about you. So
all right, I think I'm ready.
All right, you're ready. So the first question that we both have is, so seeing as you're from Maryland, you obviously have some affiliation to some sports teams from your city, correct?
Yes, I knew this was coming.
So you're Washington. Maryland is Baltimore, Washington. So I'm assuming Capitals, Orioles, what else? Nationals. Are those your teams?
Yeah. So I would say, from last year, I switched from the Orioles to the Nationals. A little bit of a bandwagon, but still the same drive.
Exactly.
I'm definitely a big Caps fan. That's like where I grew up. That was that was the hockey team to watch, and especially after they won in 2018, everyone has jumped on the hockey bandwagon down in Maryland. So that's that, yeah.
So you got that, but the real question that we want to ask here is: so you have the fan bases in the U.S.,
right?
And then you come to Toronto for school, and you see the Blue Jays, the Raptors, the Leafs, and the crazy fan bases that we have. So what would you say are like the differences in the culture of the fan bases from U.S. to Canadian teams? That's what we want to know.
Oh my God. I think there's so many. And like, I guess this is kind of a little off topic, but it kind of leads into how I explain it. When I first got to Canada, I would respond to like, if, when someone asks you a question, you didn't hear them and you're like, you guys say like, pardon or excuse me. Like I would say, what? And my roommate would be like, why are you so rude? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, why aren't you saying like pardon or excuse me or sorry, I didn't hear you? And I'm like, that's not what we do down there. We just say what? So I think that's like a really good analogy or like a equivalent to the sports culture because it's a little bit more rowdy, a little bit rougher down here. I did go to a Blue Jays game when I was up at Ryerson, and I also went to a Leafs game. So those were, I guess, really good experiences to have because I wasn't with my parents. I wasn't with my family. It was literally like teenagers going to a game and enjoying, having fun. But down here, I've been to so many Ravens games where there are fights that break out, like beers are thrown, all that stuff. Caps games where the rivalry between the Penguins, like that's huge down here, and there's a bunch of fights outside. I'm trying to think, even like the Orioles, like even where we're located, like near Baltimore, just the city itself is super violent. Mm-hmm. So I guess those are the big things that separate, Canadian teams and then teams.
Oh, Mitch, what do you have to think about? You Mitch is a Raptors fan. All these fans, what do you think?
I'm all Canadian based, I have to say, but I do know besides professional, the university and high school, like even high school, football, basketball, it is so much bigger in the US and Canada.
Yeah.
Like I've seen, because I work at the Madame Athletic Center, so I'm firsthand experiences to a lot of the basketball, volleyball games, and I've seen Alyssa. She's maybe a spoiler for Head. Alyssa does a little bit of cheerleading on the side too. So yeah. So Alyssa knows, like, okay, if you're gonna go to Ryerson, like, it's still good. You still get a vibe, but it's no like Penn State or
yeah. I was
Miami.
actually,
Like, you know what I mean?
So I was actually choosing between, these were my two top schools. I was either going to go to Ryerson for sport media or Michigan State for business. And those were my two top. And I got accepted around not the same time, but at the time, like, they were very equivalent when I was making my decision. And I went up actually to visit both during the same trip. So I had like the experience of Ryerson and then the touring of Michigan State. So it was like really close. Definitely something that set Ryerson apart is obviously our program. For people who don't know, it's like the top, in the country, let alone North America. So that's why I went there. But something I was kind of worried about was not having that culture of like sports and having that like family, you know what I mean? And at Ryerson, like, even though hockey's big, unless it's homecoming, there are no fans in those stadiums.
Big facts. So it's just, I think it's another thing. Sure, Toronto, like, you must have heard, like, sport media, like, you going to Canada, going to Toronto, that's like a myth in itself. But that's sort of the things like that you have to sacrifice. But I think you're happy with your option of the U.S. of coming to Canada. You're happy with it, right?
I am happy. I'm really glad that I chose the route I did, because I think, and this is a message to anyone, choose your major over anything else. Definitely focus on your future, and you're investing in yourself essentially when you go to university, when you go to college. So that's something to think about. Yeah.
So that's great to hear. That was one of the best answers that we've got. Like.
One out of two, one of the best answers.
Yeah, well, out of the 4 questions that we've asked on this podcast history, that's already in the top percentile, I'd say.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be here.
We'll continue talking about how you are a cheerleader at Ryerson.
This is a second question, by the way.
Yes.
More to the second topic now. What are your thoughts on how cheerleaders are portrayed in pop culture and TV shows and movies, like kind of like the what surrounds cheerleaders, like the vibe around?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. So I started cheering. So I first started off my sports career playing softball.
Okay.
And I liked it, but I was always like cheering on my teammates when they were up to bat, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't really invested in actually playing softball. So, and I was really, really shy at the time. And my mom was like, you know what? We got to get her out of her shell. Like, she's about to go to middle school. We need to get her talking, get her to develop a personality. So they put me in rec cheerleading. And where we are, it's like Pop Warner football. So it's where all the little league teams play. And then you have us on the sidelines. So where I cheered, it was called the Westminster Wildcats. It was a really small, like, one team per age group.
Well, High School Musical vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
The Wildcats.
We would cheer the football team on the sidelines, do like their little homecoming. But then in the winter, if you were, I guess, I don't want to say good enough, but if you were having that potential, the coaches would ask you to come back to do competitive. And I was asked my first season, which was really a shock looking back at like the skills I didn't have. But I fell in love with it, and I wasn't really aware of what other people were thinking about cheerleading. Like, I was still way too young to have social media. I didn't have a phone. So at that time, I was so focused and motivated on the skill set alone. So I think once I started getting an Instagram, getting a Snapchat, that's when I realized, like, cheerleaders are not portrayed as athletes. We're a lot of the time portrayed as objects, which sucks. But the reality is we do wear half tops. We do, go all out and show up to entertain. And that's a part of, I guess, the job itself too, is to look good, to be presentable.
Exactly.
So I think that would be like the time in my life where I realized cheerleading isn't recognized for the sport it is. It's recognized for the people we portray.
Yeah. But as you were saying, like, a part of it is like, okay, yes, you have to wear like the half tops and you have to look like this, but sort of like that's the thing, like, because that's all you know sometimes from you watching it, you're sort of excited to do that stuff, you know, like just because, oh, it may look a little bit like misogynistic for some that, oh, these girls have to wear that, it's still like a good thing, right? You're like, yeah, I want to cheer like this because that's what I know, you know, like if you watch Bring It On or you watch whatever other cheerleading movies there are, High School Musical, you like the scenes with the cheerleaders, like you're gonna like that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And like once I started getting more into the competition arena, then I switched to all-star cheer, which is just competitive, no cheering on the sidelines. Like this is the sport. Like if you define cheerleading, this is cheerleading. And I live in Maryland, but our competitions would go down, you know, south to Florida, and that's where the world championships are. And then sometimes we would go to New York for Christmas, and like all of these different states on the East Coast. And there's so many West Coast teams that are phenomenal as well. But when I got to there, that's when I really, really got excited about like the culture of cheerleading, because not only was it like half tops, makeup, all that, it was like full on Swarovski crystals on your uniform. Like you wear fake hair, you get the best of the best makeup, like from Sephora. It was the best experience I've ever had. And like, that's where I honestly developed my confidence, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to go all out if I'm going to do this. Yeah. And then along with that, like my skills progressed with those, like if that makes sense. And I don't know if it was because I was so motivated to be the best and whatever, but it like that's probably the main thing that I would say in culture today. It's kind of being more recognized for the sport it is, even though like it's glitz and glam and all that, but like we're fierce.
For
we're athletes.
Sure.
You guys are definitely, and I would say cheerleading is athletes for sure. But going back to talking about how we did talk about how the difference between Canada and the U.S., do you think it's different of how like a cheerleader is in Canada and the U.S.? Because I feel like in Canada, they don't get their much, I think the term is respect that they deserve. But in the U.S., cheerleading is like right beside football.
Right. Yeah. So something you guys may not know, you guys have like a world champion team in your backyard, and they're called Cheer Sport Great Whites. And they go to the world championships every year, and they compete every year. I think this year would have been like their fourth reigning world championship title. They're amazing. And if you go to Guelph and like, well, Ryerson competed against Guelph, Laurier, Western. So over in that area of, I guess, Ontario, I'm not really brushed up on my map skills. But,
the map skills. I love that.
All of them either cheer for Great Whites or Team Canada. So they have the skill. You guys have cheerleaders, you know, up and down. But I think the difference is we get recognized for it just because it's so much more. Even though in Canada it's kind of like the same, I feel like in the States the skill level is set to a certain standard, and then Canada kind of catches up. So you know how like in hockey, Canada was like top. And then eventually other countries like Russia, you know, they started building their skills to meet that standard. So it kind of looked like you guys were on the same, you know, scale. So I think that's what happens with the States and Canadian cheerleading is kind of set the standard of the new rules, the new skills, and then Canadians, you know, build up to that.
But that's great to know, because like a lot of the people, they don't know about, like you said, the Great Whites. That made like, I thought that was a mountain before just now. but now that you hear that, you're like, well, maybe I got to know what the Great Whites is. And I'm pretty sure I know some cheerleaders that they're going to be like, oh, finally somebody that respects this.
Right, and they, you know, they have a Netflix show. Go watch it on Netflix. They have their own show.
Cheer You? What is it?
No, I think it's called Cheer, but
Of course.
Yeah, but you guys have that as, you know, a show, but also in the States, we have a junior college called Navarro, and they actually have their new series on Netflix out now too, which is also like, I think the culture's changing dramatically, because like that was never a thing. It was always Bring It On. And like you said, High School Musical, where it was like the cheerleaders on the sideline and they look cute, but now it's like showing these athletes portraying their skills, and it's just amazing.
Exactly. And it's the confidence, it's everything that goes along with it. And cheerleaders, they have to gain that respect. So if you take anything from this episode, cheerleaders, that's where it's at.
That's where it's at.
Be an episode in itself.
Yes, I love it. So we've gotten into the cheerleading, we've gotten to the US Canadian differences, and sort of stemming off from that, but keeping it the same, because we got one sports question, okay, you'd say. Then we got a pop culture question, yes. So now we're going to dive into the more personal side, the relationship side of it, which is something that we want to know. So judging, you were talking to us before, and judging off like your posts and your stories, you have a boyfriend, correct?
I do.
Yes. All right, that's great. Yeah, you have a boyfriend, and I know that you came, and as if you watch the podcast, you know that you came from Maryland to Canada, and he doesn't live in Canada, correct? He lives in the States.
He does not, and he's going to college next year in Florida.
Okay, Florida. You see, this is great. He's a smart guy. So now you have a guy in Florida, but you're going to school in Toronto. So our question for you was, how do you balance having a long distance relationship? Like, how does that work? Because a lot of people that I know have struggled with it and have trouble maintained, but I think you've been with him for maybe, I don't know how long, but like maybe a certain amount of time. So
have like a long-term relationship from like Guelph to like UFT. Like it's an
exactly.
And they're like, oh, it's too long. But like Maryland to like Toronto, or even Florida to Toronto is like,
it's over a 24-hour drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you say you dealt with that at the beginning?
Okay, so I actually love this question because it allows me to be very vulnerable and transparent, which I know is what this podcast is all about. Mm-hmm. I definitely want to start off by saying it is not easy. Like, it is not like, you know, a piece of cake and you just text each other and FaceTime each other. It is so difficult. And it's also, on the other end of the spectrum, it's also not impossible. So I think to each their own. So whatever I say, if you take my advice, go for it, but take it with a grain of salt. When I first moved, I've never felt pain like that within a relationship. Like, I knew my parents would be visiting me. I knew my parents would like constantly be supporting me. And obviously one thing that people don't think about is like the loyalty part. You're always assuming that your partner is going to be loyal. You always assume that they're not going to cheat on you. Like, no one ever expects that to happen, right? Mm-hmm. So in the back of my mind, that was always something. And he is like genuinely the greatest guy I've ever met in terms of being loyal and honest with me. And Garrett, if you're watching this, I commend you for that, because a lot of guys aren't like that.
My guy, I'm liking the sound of this guy.
Yeah. So at the time, we were like 6 months into our relationship, so not long at all. And my parents thought I was crazy. They were like, "You are gonna do long distance with someone you barely know," and da da da. Oh. So to that I say, it like, we're still together. Yeah. So balancing it in university wasn't hard timing wise because we're still in the same time zone. We kind of had the same schedules. He's still in school as well. So timing wise, it wasn't the issue at the beginning. We spent a lot of time on FaceTime. One thing we would do is sync up our Netflixes. So we would watch and then talk about it at the same time, which would be like really helpful. Another thing we would do is like write postcards back and forth. Super lame and cheesy, but it worked. That's cute. Yeah. And then he actually came up in December for the cheer competition for nationals. So he was able to watch me compete. And even though it was a short weekend, it was so meaningful to me that he, you know, made the effort to come up. And then during, what is it called? Reading week?
Yeah, reading week.
Yeah. So like our, I guess, Thanksgiving break, and reading week, I came down, and timing wise, like God's plan, it was his birthday like that week. Oh, so yeah, so it kind of ended like the stars were aligning, whatever. But something that a lot of people that do long distance don't talk about is like the arguments. A lot of arguments that I would get would stem from my insecurities. So I'd always be like, well, who are you talking to? Like, why aren't you talking to me right now? And, you know, you have all this free time. Like, why aren't you talking to me? And I think as a woman, that's kind of normal. And I hate to like generalize because that's like, ugh, I hate doing that. But as girls, we tend to get really insecure with ourselves and then take it out on other people. So I think that was a really big bump in the road. Another thing that we would get into arguments over is like, well, I guess that stems off from, you know, me being insecure, but I would always be like, so why can't you write me a letter right now? Or like, why can't you be doing something that involves me? Or like, why can't we be FaceTiming while I'm on my break? So those were like the biggest issues. And I don't know how in deep you want this podcast to go, but physically, I'm like a physical affirmation type of girl. Like verbally, I need affirmations, but physically too. Like even like holding hands, that to me just like gives me assurance that, you know, he still likes me.
Exactly.
So
sure.
that was like, so that was like another big thing that was an issue, because we would go months at a time without seeing each other. And that's like months at a time not hugging your best friend, or not, you know, speaking to your best friend face to face.
Exactly.
So it was really difficult, but looking back on it now, I wouldn't have traded it for the world. And like, I would tell my younger self back then too, like, go for it. There's no harm in trying. And even if it didn't work out, now I have no regrets, because I did all I could. He did all he could, and we're still here. So even if we weren't still together, I would still say try it, because there's no harm in that.
And I think the sentiment that you had was very good. Like sometimes like the arguments and the stuff that you have, people can say the argument this and the argument that, but part of a relationship is working at it. I've personally never been in a long-term sort of relationship like that. So it's never been like that. Like I've had to, check in on this person and do this and do that and make sure. And arguments, if you're long distance, you're like, well, I don't even see that person. Why do I have to say that? And I think, like, why would I even have to like continue this argument? Like, let's just say I text them, my Wi-Fi's down, and then the relationship's done. Like, you know, but as you said, a lot of the stuff you did, letters, postcards, like it can help out with that.
For sure. And also too, something I didn't mention, which I'm sure like not a lot of guys would go through this certain situation, but me being in sport media, a limited number of girls ratio to a larger amount of boys.
100%.
Not that it was like suspicious or anything. Like I've never flirted with any of y'all, but you know what I mean? Like just me being in a group, like I was in groups where it was just me and then the rest were guys. And that just is the nature of the beast in our major. But at the same time, my boyfriend was like, wait a minute, like, why aren't you in any groups with girls? And I'm like, well, that wasn't an option.
I think it's like 17 to like 60 or something crazy like that. Like that, it's insane.
That's like, I mean, that's a whole nother show in itself. If you want to have me on, if this does well, then you can have me back and we can talk about that.
Exactly. That could be a whole nother PSA announcement.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think, especially going on that point, like the girls to guys, like but I get it, because I've been around and a lot of people around Ontario, like, yes, girls are into sports and that, but like a lot of it is the intimidation factor. Like if I'm going into sport media, you grow up, you're watching Ahmad Rashad, you're watching all these, like Craig Sager, you're watching all the most of it. Maybe like my favorite one, like Doris Burke, like she must be an inspiration to so many people in sport media, just how she does it and how she does that. But like, it's just maybe lack of role models, but the dedication and the time it takes for anybody to get into this is just, it's just exceptional.
Yeah. And not to take over your podcast, but I do want to say too, like,
go ahead, host it.
I do want to say that it's not even just being like intimidated. So I do want to like talk about, this is like a good point, and you know, kind of a conversation starter too, is when I first started. So I guess got my first start, dip my toes in the water of being a woman in sports. I had like a really rough time. And at the age I was, I think I was 16. So I was still young and not an adult yet. I have never had a relationship, you know, stuff like that. That all factors in to what I'm about to say. But I was working for a junior team, and there was the situation where, like, my brother was on the team, and the GM would tell the team in front of my brother, when your sister turns 18, she's fair game. Like discrediting my work, that, you know, it's so degrading. And then at the same time, it's so scary. So not that it's just like intimidating to be a woman in sports, but it's scary.
Yeah. That's terrible, because
there's no room for that. There's zero.
No room for that. And then it's a double standard, because a guy, a guy's in the dressing room, he's just like, he's one of that. But just because you're a girl, that shouldn't mean that happens. And I'm glad that you opened up to us and told us about that, because that's a problem. I'm definitely, if that's happened to you, I guarantee it's happened to somebody else, and it's happened to many other people.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yeah. And another thing too is like this, when I began learning about hockey and actually diving into the sport to know more of like the analytics and the stats, like I joined a women's team in the summer. So leading up to that, I was doing, I don't know if you guys have this in Canada, but it's like free skates. Like you can just go on the weekend and like shoot a stick and puck.
Like at a rink. You can just
yeah. So it was like that. So I was the only girl signed up, and I had my own locker room, whatever, and they set it all up. So the locker room wasn't locked. A guy came in, pulled down his pants. I mean, if that was hard, then it was really small, but you know what I mean? Like, it was just so disrespectful. And I was like, thank God I was like in a mindset where I was like, I'm not going to fall for this shit. Oh, sorry. I'm not going to fall.
Okay.
I'm not going to fall for that. And like, I even said to him, I was like, I could literally say that you were about to like do something to me. Like, how does that? And then I'm not going to say his name, obviously. This isn't to like ruin his reputation or to crap on men or anything. But in these situations, in these circumstances, that is where I get discouraged. That's where I'm like, wow, like I'm doing all this work to get to where I am, to understand the game better that I want to go further into. And then this happens. And I'm like, how do you think that makes me see all hockey players? You know what I mean? And that's not how I view the world or anything. Like, I'm not going to generalize, but at that moment I was like, wow, like why would I want to contribute to a society, to a culture that acts like this? So, you know, what you were saying, like, there's no room for this. There's no room for that. And that's kind of why I wanted to open it up on your podcast. Cause like,
definitely
other girls need to hear the stories. And like, if they are afraid of opening up about it, like say it. Cause
I'm glad that you came to the podcast. And sure, we're two guys, but we want to hear these that's what we want. We want our audience to understand and hear those issues.
Mm-hmm. And also too, like, I think it's amazing how you even came and kept going in sports media and you kept pushing yourself. Because like, obviously, I'm gonna be honest with you, you're one of the best people we have in sports media. Like,
oh, thank you so much.
I'm being honest, you're so confident with what you do. You're good at your job. Like, you're good at your recordings. Like, that's amazing. Like, it's actually great that even though all this stuff happened to you, you still kept pushing yourself and kept doing it just because it's something you love, and sports is something that you have a passion for. So I just want to tip my hat to you saying that.
For sure, you can. At the same time, that sentiment, but she pushed us forward, but those things that happen are not going to be put to the side either, because those are crucial parts. Because in history, sure, it's about the drive, but it's also, you got to look back and remember what happened. So those things and those stuff, hopefully, like, as we're the future of the industry, we know, and people like us are in the industry that open up and make everything a safe environment for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that was great. But now, since that, I think that was a great end to that. But now we're approaching the last segment of the podcast.
Oh no, I'm having so much fun.
I know, it's fun time over here too. I wish it could be 4 hours, to be honest. But the open book segment is one that Mitch has. I think Mitch does a great job at explaining it.
Yes. Okay. So again, not all people are like you, Alyssa, that are very open up and are like, they put themselves in a vulnerable situation. So we came up with this, not game, but like segment where it's called Open Book. Okay. And where we got it from was, again, I kind of explained this not the best on the last one. I said, I don't talk to my parents. No, that's not the case. I just wanted to live the university experience, and my parents understood that. So they would take the time when let's say we're eating dinner, I would give them a segment I call Open Book, where they can ask me anything they want, personally anything, and I'm just in a vulnerable state that I'll just let them know everything that's happening in my life. Anything that they're worried about, I just let them know. So I thought I would bring that into this show. So basically what's happening is the guest, which is you, have a choice between Marc or myself, and you get to ask us any question you want, whether it be about sports, rather it be about pop culture, rather it be about something personal relationship. You can ask us anything you want. The thing is, though, right after you ask us and we answer, we have a question for you.
Is it the same question?
No,
It's not. It can be the same question.
Okay.
We don't want the same. We don't want to say the same question. We want to have a variety of questions, but it's gonna be in the same topic or it's kind of the same feel from it. You know, you kind of trying to say what I'm saying. So if it's something personal, it will be a personal question back. If it's a sports question, it will be a sports question back.
Okay. I see what you're doing. Okay.
So if you ask us about gravy, we're not gonna go start talking about mashed potatoes. You know what I mean? If you get that analogy.
That's
Okay.
So we'll give you a second. We'll give you a second. While we're doing a second here, I'm gonna have Frankie, our producer, do a little shout out for our sponsor.
Big man.
Frankie, you there?
All right. Yeah, I'm here. So I better be here, or else this will be a long recording.
Exactly. This would be. Oh my God! All that great stuff would be gone.
No, I'm here. Yeah, just a big shout out to our sponsors. Alyssa, tell all your buddies down in Maryland that you'll bring some back with you from Toronto.
Well, it's a little illegal. I know what this is.
Smuggling.
Well done.
It's okay. Border security doesn't need to know. If border security's watching this, don't worry.
This is Frankie by himself.
Yeah, but all joking aside, it's a great Canadian made product. It's a vodka infused lemonade. It's all natural ingredients. It's not like the other stuff that's very artificial. It's real lemons, real everything. So you can buy it at your local CBO. It's officially out now. Well juice, well Canada, well vodka infused lemonade. It's can't go wrong.
Yeah. Thank you, Frankie, for that little break in the action. I love it. Well, I love it.
No problem.
But Alyssa, we've given you a bit of time. Who are you wanting to ask? Me or Mitch?
I'm gonna ask both of you.
No, you gotta pick.
Okay, I feel like I'll ask. I don't know.
Well, they saw them, so we didn't know which one you're going with.
The only thing is, so it's like a question about me. Like I'm asking something, but I don't remember which one I met first. I think I met Marc first, maybe, in sound production. So this one will be for Marc, but Mitch, I'll DM you my question, and then you have to respond.
I'll answer it too if you'd like to, but
Exactly.
Okay, so my question for you is, what was your first impression of me when we first met?
All right. So first impression, open and honest. So I walked in. I actually saw you before. I saw you at the orientation. So I knew who you were before then. I was like, oh, who's this girl? And then I think I tried to talk to you at orientation, but you were a bit busy. So I was like, okay. But then I sort of like, okay, who is this? And then when it was the Facebook thing and the group chat, I was like, okay, I sort of IG stalked and I was like, who's this? Alyssa Morrison. And then I saw, oh, this is Alyssa Morrison. I was like, okay, looks like she's in the States and looks like she does cheerleading. I was like, great. And then we were in the sound production, and then Finley, our G, my dog's Finley. Everybody knows my dog's Finley.
Man.
We were making the group, and then I remember the first impression, if you're having an exact first impression, I was like, wow, she seems like really cool girl. But I think the main thing of the biggest thing was, I think you had a podcast when we were, it was just us five. It was me, you, and like, I think somebody else, like a girl in the class, Julia maybe. And we were just talking, and then you had an open and honest podcast, I think. And that sort of really got, what was it about? I forget again. It was about moving from the U.S. to Canada and the struggles that you had there, correct?
Yeah.
So my first impression was like, oh, like, she's like obviously like a good looking girl. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then like, I meet you and you're even a nicer person. So if you want to get that, that's my answer. She was in my group for sound production. We had that. So that's my answer to that question.
yeah.
Marc's so cute. What a big sweetheart he is.
Dude, for the sake of it, when I first started or like met you, your energy and your confidence was just higher than anyone else part of it. That's one thing. You
were so sweet.
You're just so like, not like, I'm not gonna say hyped or anything, but you just had a confidence, and you're always like want to make new friends. Like you were very open, make new friends. And that was my just first impression of you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
All right. So now,
Marc, she did
Yes.
ask you the question. She asked you the question. So now
Mhm.
you have a question for Alyssa.
all right. I think I have the answer here.
Wait. You have the answer?
No, the answer to my I don't know. I messed it up. I messed it up. Don't worry. I asked this question. So when you come into sport media, and obviously you see everybody around sport media and like all the people there, and you've interacted and you've seen them. What would you say? I'm gonna make it a nice question because what was your best interaction with a person in sports media that really touched your heart?
Wow.
Best interaction I've had. So we are like a very close program.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of other programs cannot say the same. There are some with thousands in their own grade. So I think that in itself, we're so lucky that we're allowed to be so close to each other. I mean, like, not saying I've met like my bestest friends, but I have met so many nice and genuine people. I guess an umbrella answer for that would be like all the guys in our program have been so welcoming into the community that is male dominated. And to me, that like gave me so much hope because going into it, I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to really have to step up my game, which like looking back, I want to slap myself because it's like, we're all equal in this program. And I think the best part about our program was that we were equal. Like whether you had experience or not, like we were all on the same level. So I think as, like I said, as an umbrella statement, like all the guys, the best moment was feeling like I belonged in a place where I didn't feel like I belonged before. But that's also cool too. Like we're all like a girl gang in sport media. But the one I'm talking about, she actually lived a few doors down from me and we both lived in a building in Res. And like the first day we had, I guess like an orientation for our floor. And I've never had to go through that before, which was super strange.
Yeah.
But our, res advisor was like, tell your name, where you're from, and then your program. And I noticed she was in sport media and I was like, oh my God, like it's already begun where we're in competition. And I hate that my mindset was like that. But as school progressed, she was also in our sound production class as well. But we were also in our television production together, and that really showed me that she was like there for everyone. She is such a hard worker. And I think the reason my connection was so great with her is because when I felt unmotivated, when I felt not successful in what I was producing, she was always there kind of like pumping me up. But even as like, I guess, healthy competition, I always wanted to be up to par with her as well. So I think that connection was great. And then once I got to know her personality, where she's from and like who she is, I really, really had like an amazing relationship with her. And I'm so glad, like we still talk pretty often, even though we're not even in the same country. And so I would say she's someone definitely that left a mark on my heart.
So look at that. Best interactions. The guys, look, we got
the
guys
bros,
and Isabel. So I love that. But I think Frankie, our producer, he's telling us the Zoom meeting's about to end.
Okay.
This podcast is coming to a close, but me and Mitch, I want to say thank you from the bottom of our heart for coming on this podcast. Mitch?
Of course.
I gotta say, I know we've only had 2 episodes of this, but
This was our Ben already put to the side.
Ben, we love you, man. We know. If you guys actually don't know, we have an intro song that played before this. That is Ben Botehlo he made the whole song. So Ben, I know we love you, man, but this was just the way you were so open and with everything that you said was just amazing. That's exactly what the show's about.
Oh,
So,
thank you so much for having me on.
Do you have any last words for us, Alyssa, before we sign off?
Oh, that's so intimidating. Okay. Stay safe. Everyone be safe. Check in with your friends. Work on your mental health. Find something that you like to do in quarantine that you can't do when you're busy doing your normal life stuff. And yes, thank you for having me on.
All right. So you heard that here first. And that's Alyssa Morrison. Great guest. And until next time.
Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow TSP Sports.
I always do that. So that's it. That was a podcast.
Well done.
Well done.